Coming off of one of the more successful seasons in a long time, Knicks fans are very excited about their team right now, and rightfully so. They very easily could have made the conference finals and broke one of the longest conference final streaks in the entire league, but now we go into an offseason where they're looking to take that next step. They're looking to really put this full plan in motion to try and make the Knicks a championship contender, and I do think that that's doable. So when you think about the Knicks and how they're going to continue to build this team, everything for them moving forward revolves around Jalen Brunson. It was an unbelievable signing by them. He was so much better than I thought he was going to be, legitimately an all-NBA caliber player, and to get him for what they did in free agency has turned out to be a fantastic move for them. And even though before he got there it felt like this was Julius Randle's team, or maybe the future belonged to RJ Barrett, I think it's now very clear that Jalen Brunson can be a very, very good player on a championship contending team, and as long as you continue to add pieces around him, the future looks pretty bright here in New York. And I think there are a lot of stars that would want to play with Jalen Brunson because of the way that he facilitates. He's a true point guard, as well as the fact that I don't think it would be difficult to find players that work well alongside him, and I think that is going to be the goal no matter what moving forward. And as you look at the rest of the roster, there's a couple of different pieces here and a couple different decisions that you need to make if you're New York. First and foremost, you need to decide if Julius Randle wants to be a part of this team moving forward, or if you would like for him to be a part of the team moving forward. It feels like he does have at least a little bit of value around the league as a guy that can score in the front court. When he's playing well, when he's making shots, he's a really good player, borderline all-star caliber guy, but he's just been very up and down, very inconsistent for New York at times, and I think they're going to look at what they could get out of him in a trade, whether it be splitting him up into a couple of different pieces or potentially making him the focal point of a star trade. He's kind of a difficult player to trade. He's right in that tier of he's good and everybody knows that he's good, but he doesn't necessarily have a ton of value in a trade because teams aren't typically trading for players like Julius Randle. He's not a guy, as we saw with the Knicks this year, that really puts you over the top towards championship contention status, and he kind of finds himself in that, like, maybe a little bit better than Tobias Harris kind of trade value. So it's going to be difficult for New York, but I wouldn't be surprised at all if maybe he wants to go somewhere else if they really look at exploring trades for him. And then of course RJ Barrett is the other decision to make here. He's had his moments where he's looked much better, and he's had moments where he looks completely overwhelmed, and at this point, now that his new extension is kicking in, you kind of are stuck with him, or he needs to be the focal point of some kind of deal moving forward. He was reportedly the focal point of the Donovan Mitchell trade talks last offseason, and I wouldn't be surprised to see them continue to shop him this year. And in terms of upgrading the roster, the goal for New York very clearly, I think, needs to be turning this into at least a borderline championship contender. A team that, if you add a little bit more talent to it, if you add potentially some more star powers we're going to talk about here a little bit later, you can really start to see yourself hosting a conference finals in Madison Square Garden. That would be unbelievable for them. And so I think we're going to see them go out and potentially chase after some stars. There's been a lot of rumors thrown around about possible Damian Lillard stuff, waiting on Donovan Mitchell here in a couple of seasons. Karl-Anthony Towns has been thrown out there as well, and I think they're really well positioned because of the momentum that this season provided them. The fact that Brunson is there as a legitimate star already for you to then bring in someone else alongside him, and the salaries and the different pieces on this roster really work well for a star trade. You could very easily do RJ Barrett, the Evan Fournier salary, and some picks, and that would be a decent trade package. You could do, if you want to spice it up a little bit more, you could do RJ Barrett, Mitchell Robinson, and some picks in exchange for Karl-Anthony Towns. Like, it's really easy to fit some things together here, and I think the decision is going to be, do you want to trade either RJ or Julius Randle? I think that would be too much turnover to trade both of them, and if you do, who are you trading them for? And this offseason specifically, I think, is going to be really interesting in terms of star player movement because there's not a ton of salary cap space out there, and the teams that do hold that salary cap space are teams that stars just generally aren't going to want to go to. They're just not very good. And so if a star, whether it be Karl-Anthony Towns, Zach LaVine, Damian Lillard, does want to change teams, it's going to come down to trade packages. And again, I think it's very easy for the Knicks to put something interesting together. Generally speaking, their players aren't as valuable as some of the other teams around the league that might be looking to make a star trade, but they have plenty of future picks, including from other teams, and that's going to continually help them. And that has to be the goal, in my opinion. You make a fantastic move last offseason by signing Jalen Brunson, and you have all these other pieces that guys like Fournier that are just kind of chilling there that aren't really helping your roster. Mitchell Robinson, who's good, but maybe you could look to upgrade at that position. Julius Randle, who's good, but maybe you could look to upgrade at that position. Same thing for RJ Barrett. Upgrades on the roster, I think, are going to be the goal for New York, and I think they could easily challenge for a top 4, maybe even top 3 seed next year, depending on what happens with Philly. Now, outside of, star trades and things like that, there's some other pieces that they need to make some decisions on. Josh Hart is a free agent this offseason as a player option, but I'm assuming he's going to decline that player option. That's going to add some money to their books there. And then they've got a bunch of just like random young guys they kind of need to figure out what they want to do. I mentioned Robinson, I mentioned RJ Barrett. Obi Toppin is another guy, and again, it fits pretty well if you're looking at making a star trade, all of these different little pieces. It's almost like kind of how the Lakers were when they traded for Anthony Davis. They don't have, I don't think, enough to trade for someone on Davis's level unless they gave up literally every first round pick through the entirety of their future. But it's kind of similar to that, where it's like maybe RJ Barrett is the focal point, but you've got, oh, you want Obi Toppin, you want Emmanuel Quickley, you want Mitchell Robinson, you want all these picks, you want the Fournier salary. Sure, have all these things. They have pieces that really, really work throughout the entirety of their roster. And again, I think the goal should be to raise the ceiling. Now, I'm sure there are people watching this video right now that are saying, Tucker, we do this all the time. The Knicks are always chasing stars. They almost never get them. They're not actually as good as they showed this postseason. They got a little bit lucky against a Cleveland team that made no adjustments, and then they couldn't even beat the 8th seeded Miami Heat in the second round to host a conference final, or to get to the conference finals. I get all that. Something feels different about this Knicks team this time around because of Jalen Brunson, because of some of the smart moves that they've made in recent seasons. Something feels a little bit different. It feels like they're on the brink of something. Assuming that Jalen Brunson is healthy for the entirety of the season next year, and they bring in another player alongside him, I think we're going to start to look at New York a little bit differently. It's not necessarily going to be the easiest offseason for them because of some of the decisions that they need to make with RJ Barrett, with Julius Randle. Like, these are not easy decisions to make, and it wouldn't be that difficult to screw it up, right? And lose this momentum and change around the roster in a really negative way. But when you look at all these little, kind of in the middle salaries they have, all these future picks that they have, all these young guys, it's almost a dream situation to be in, and it goes back to bringing in Jalen Brunson last offseason. I will take the L on this. I thought that Jalen Brunson was good, but I thought, like, absolute best case scenario, he could be like a borderline all-star caliber player. He was like heavily in contention for all NBA spots this year. Like, that's how good Jalen Brunson was this year, and then continued to elevate that even in the postseason as well. And everything goes back to that decision, and everything moving forward is going to be about how can we use this leverage that we now have with Jalen Brunson as a star in New York to attract other stars. Even though they've been unsuccessful in recent years and over the last 15 years really in attracting stars to New York, I think this team feels different, and I think there are going to be a lot of stars out there that are looking around wondering when their team is going to look like this team in New York, where they've got a true point guard, they've got young players, they've got assets, and want to go there. And again, the lack of cap space around the league really helps the Knicks here, because whether it be free agents this offseason or a team that is unable to add to their roster because of a lack of cap space, suddenly the Knicks are looking like one of the most promising up-and-coming situations in the entire league. And anytime that happens, you're going to have stars start to look over there and say, hey, maybe I want to get traded there. Maybe I want to get traded there. And again, names to keep an eye on here would be, Zach LaVine, Karl Anthony Towns. I wouldn't be super excited about the Towns thing if I were the Knicks, just because I kind of feel like that's Julius Randle, basically. Like, those two guys, they're not on the same level in terms of talent. Like, Cat's incredibly talented, but I don't think that that's the guy I want to go all in here for. I think you want to kind of pick and choose who you want to make this move for, which is why they didn't go for Donovan Mitchell last offseason. At the time, I thought it was a mistake, but maybe in a few years they'll end up with him anyway. Now, granted, it is still the Knicks. Maybe they'll find a way to screw it up. Maybe they'll trade for the wrong star, or guys will get hurt, RJ won't develop, or they don't have nearly as many assets as I think that they do right now. So who knows? But point being, the Knicks feel different. It feels like they have a plan, and I can't wait to see how they execute it.